Hey, good Wednesday evening to you all. How are you? It is good to see you. It is good to be seen by you. I am Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver. Welcome to our little program. I hope you're all having a wonderful evening. I am frazzled. I am absolutely short-circuited tonight, but that's okay because we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk some tabletop smack. Kyle's going to be joining us here in just a minute. He is actually sitting out in the green room brewing up what one can only presume is a suitably strong cup of coffee because it is the morning time down there on the other side of the earth sandwich. But anyway, Elvin Made In is here to steal Delver photos. Good luck with that. I say good luck with that. Good to see you all. Michael Dale, Wave of Mutilation. Emmy, of course. Fornelius, a jolly good fellow. Fornelius, a jolly good fellow. James Seymour, did I mention James Seymour already? Well, I'm doing it now. James Seymour. Vaughn. And that is what is happening tonight. So thank you all for hanging out, guys. And I gotta say, like I mentioned before, it's been a crazy day this afternoon. Let me just tell you what, Lord Coron, how's it going? I've mentioned before that my beloved hound Zeus he's getting on in his ears, and I took him out today. Now we're starting to have our first really hot days of the year here. So I took Zeus out for a walk and got about halfway home and he collapsed. And I got him back on his feet and we made it to the middle of the street about a half a block down and he collapsed again. Fortunately, one of my neighbors was kind enough to rush out and we picked him up and we got him in the neighbor's car and drove him back to my house and got him sorted. So yeah, I'm a little, so I'm kind of worried about that, but we'll just have to see. I mean, he's back at the house. He had his dinner. He's walking around. He's lazing around. So maybe it was just too hot. Maybe it was just, it was too hot of a day. I don't know. So we'll just see what tomorrow's like. But anyway, so we'll just take it real easy with Mr. Zeus. But anyhow, I hope you guys are doing well. Before we hop into the usual BS, I want to share something with you guys. Now, the channel, I am currently between sponsors, as it were. Sorry, I'm parched. You folks know, for a little more than a year now, we've been sponsored by our friends who were over at Hellebard Games. They have essentially closed up shop. And so Don and we didn't part ways. We're just not advertising something that's not there anymore. I mean, that makes perfect sense. So that means I am between sponsors right now. If you have a going concern and you wish to discuss rates, please reach out to me. Get the email down there. It's not just for Patreon. Although if you do want to support the show on Patreon for as little as $1 a month or via YouTube membership for $2 a month, that's certainly a cromulent thing to do. But in lieu of actual sponsor, I am going to highlight some creators who have some very cool things. And this time, this particular person I'm going to highlight, you guys know this dude because he's been on the show several times, and he's a bro. He's a good guy. Let me see here if I can highlight this. Is, of course, Hellabard. I looked at Wave of Mutilation's comment and it completely erased my brain. Hang on a second. I dropped my mouse. I can't go anywhere without this mouse. Where did it go to? Hold on, guys. I am just not with it tonight. I'm sorry. I should get a trackball for over here. I hate trackballs, but if it would save on table real estate and my mouse falling off. The video I did today has 2 edits in it because my mouse fell off. Tracy Lesh. Tracy Lesh Designs. He is one of the creators of original Dungeons and Dragons art. He has a store over on Zazzle that you guys absolutely should check out. You can get cool prints like that. Well, not exactly like that. That's a canvas print. But you can absolutely get a bunch of cool stuff. So go check out Tracy's store on Zazzle. Spend some of your hard-earned cash on Tracy's stuff. And speaking of hard-earned, back from, one can only presume, wrestling giant tarantulas, drop bears, kangaroos, and wallabies, I would like to welcome my beautiful and talented co-host, the Thunder from Down Under, Mr. Kyle the Viking Hat GM Schuant. Kyle.
Hello. Is Bill's audio a bit funny for everyone else, or is it just me? Because for me, it sounds like you're on an old cassette tape that's been stretched out in the sun.
No, it's actually you, Kyle. Your connection to us is not great. No. It's settling down now, but it's getting there.
No, Daffy, you do not want to see me shirtless. Trust me.
No, I think she said Kylie. Yeah, she said Kylie. Kylie Minogue. You want topless shots of Kylie Minogue? Well, we don't really provide that service here, Connect, but I don't judge. Anyway, Lord Coron says, "Where am I keeping you? We have a team standing by for rescue." But anyhow,
this is Bill's basement.
Yeah, exactly. If you know anything about Florida and basements, you know what peril Kyle is in. Yeah, our water table starts like 3 centimeters under the dirt here, Kyle. You know those long shots in the Black Ass videos when they're just like walking across mud flats? Yeah, that's Florida. Like that is the terrain of Florida, my friend.
I can't remember what it was. It's something I saw recently where it said, my parents are crazy preppers. They moved to Florida and built a basement.
I love that. My parents are crazy preppers. They moved to Florida and built a basement. Absolutely. That is completely crazy. So let's see. I want to scroll back through and see if we had any comments other than Connect's strange romantic drives towards an 80s pop diva. We don't judge around here. Anyway, so Kyle, I'm gonna talk about this on the Nerd Council of Doom this weekend, but I can talk about it here too. I don't know. So Kyle, when you were a kid and you had the basic D&D set, did you have did you have this one with the
red? I had the red box. No, I didn't have that one.
You didn't have
the other one.
So you had the one with the Elmore artwork on the cover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you hear about that today? I don't know how long you've been up. I don't know if you've been able to hook
No,
in.
I'm not up on all the internet dramas and stuff.
Yeah. So now I want to talk to you about this from a standpoint. You know what? I'm going to bring this up here. Let me see if I can pull this up, because you are that which you are. But apparently, WizKids, a company that makes miniatures, has decided that the iconic Larry Elmore fighter from the Redbox Basic, this image right here, they've announced that that's a woman. The miniature that WizKids is going to be releasing, they've said,
but it's not a woman. It's the guy who was the example fighter, the Strength 17 example fighter.
well,
because there's for those who don't know, there's in like the old basic one anyway, the one that has that on the cover, which from memory had actually a redder kind of dragon to it, but maybe I'm just confusing that with the red box.
Just could be your monitor.
Yeah, but anyway, that guy, that was basically the build and clothing of the guy. There was an example adventure. It was like a choose your own adventure. If you do this, go to number 23. If you do this, go to number 46. And it told you to roll dice and all that sort of stuff. And you had the little adventure with the cleric, the leaner, and all the rest. Yeah, that's the guy. It's obviously a rear view of the same guy.
Right. And so let's talk about this from an authoritative position, Kyle. I'm going to zoom in here. Let's ignore the dragon for a minute. Let's ignore the dragon. Let's ignore the sword and everything else. Let's just look at. We're moving in on the dragon, but that's not where we're going. We're going to scroll down here. I just want your opinion. As you are a physical trainer, Kyle, and I know artistic license is just that, it's artistic license, and we can't see a huge amount of the anatomy, but like looking at the thigh, the shoulder blade, everything else, is this, in your opinion, the physique of a man or a woman? I just want to know your opinion, Kyle. I'm not
a man, but not because of the muscularity, but because of the leanness.
It's a man, not because of the muscularity, but because of the leanness. Okay.
Yeah. So the sort of a healthy level of body fat for guys. Like when you see it tossed around online, you hear about 6% body fat and stuff like that. That's only bodybuilders up on stage when you can see the striations across their muscles and stuff like that, as opposed to seeing the outline of their muscles. Most guys will get visible abs at around 10 to 12% body fat, depending on their particular body composition. And that's visible abs if they sort of clench them. If they clench them hard, you might see a sort of a strip down the middle, and one or two pop up when they're at about 13 to 15% body fat, depends on the guy. But most guys will be healthy at about 15% body fat. Your average Western guy is like 25% or so body fat. You know, he's got the belly that hangs over the jeans and all that sort of stuff. The women, though, they tend to have about 10% higher body fat. Once they drop under about 17%, women start getting that female athlete triad of losing menstrual function and so on. So women will naturally have a higher body fat. Body fat's associated with estrogen. So it stores estrogen, the female hormone that makes them menstruate and gives them breasts and all the rest. So they tend to have a higher percent body fat. Even if they've got a similar level of muscularity, they'll have more body fat on top. The ones, both men and women, who are the fitness model types, they have to be engaged in constant work. And when they're at their leanest, they're actually at their weakest. Like the fitness models on the day of the shoot, they've got paper mache weights because they can't handle anything because they've dieted down very low body fat, which involve big caloric deficit. They've got a lack of energy in their system, and they're dehydrated as well, because at that level, showing the muscles even further requires dehydration. So they're weak as piss. So a male warrior wouldn't be walking around with six-pack abs, because if he did, he wouldn't be able to swing his sword. The female warrior would likewise have, well, depending on how naturally hippie and busky and everything she is, she would be similar like that. Even if she's muscular underneath, she'd be similar. You can see this if you just go and look at the International Powerlifting Federation, their webpage, because that's drug tested. So they'll still be taking some drugs, but they're tested, so it'll be minimized. That's drug tested ones. And you could then click through to their names and look up the images of them and all the rest, and you see what those men and women look like. And they're very strong, but they're not super lean. So that gives you an idea of what a warrior might look like as a man or a woman. Now, that said, it's a fantasy game, so it doesn't matter. So I think, like in Last of Us 2, there was comments about one of the characters that she was too muscular, she looked like a man, blah, blah, blah. Her physique was actually based on the body model of Colleen Fosh, who's a CrossFit athlete, and the top CrossFit athletes are all using anabolic steroids.
Oh. Okay.
So I don't have a problem with characters in fantasy art looking like that, because they're like action heroes. Male action heroes, your Chris Hemsworths, your Christian Bales, and all the rest. I mean, Christian Bale went in 18 months from The Machinist, 110 pounds, to Batman Begins, 220 pounds in 18 months, and he became muscular. There is no doubt that he would have used anabolic steroids in that process. There's no doubt whatsoever. Because otherwise, he literally doubled his body weight in that time. He just would have become fat if he attempted to do it naturally. If he done it over several years, he could do it completely naturally. But in 18 months, no, it's not physically possible. So all our action heroes and everything that we see on screen are already using supernatural means, right? They're using anabolic steroids. They're using something that goes above and beyond natural. So if we're in a fantasy role-playing game setting, they will be supernatural as well, right? 1800 strength, ogre strength. That's supernatural. You know, that's I can't remember what the exact number was. It was something like they could do a strict press with 450 pounds. You know, nobody has ever done a strict press with 450 pounds. That's an ogre. You know,
yeah.
Right?
I mean,
so I don't have a problem with that, because it's a fantasy role playing game. So the muscularity isn't an issue. It's just the leanness is unnatural. But I don't really care if it's natural or not, because, as I said, it's a fantasy game. So who cares if you want to play a chick that's a bit like an ogre? Who cares? It's just, to me, that character was always the character who's in the box set. It's just a review of the same guy.
Okay. So if we look here, let me see if I can bring this up. If we look here, and I'm going to have to open that in a new tab and zoom into it. This is what they're telling us that the character in the box set is. That the physiology of this person that's supposed to be fighting the red dragon is this. And I guess I just wanted your take on that. I wanted.
Well, it looks weird, but I mean, figurines usually look weird because, you know, they have to have weapons that are disproportionately large and all that sort of stuff. That one just strikes me as having a head that's too small.
A head that's too small. Though, well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, but I mean, lots of figurines are like that, though. Whether they're depicting men or women or orcs or fairies, whatever. That you know, the proportions are weird.
I just think you could paint it green and you'd have a super mutant from the Fallout games.
Yeah. No, look, the whole thing nowadays, everyone's getting neurotic about women's bodies. You know, it's like why is it the male superheroes are jacked and the female superheroes aren't? And you go, how could she be super strong if she doesn't have any muscles? Well, because it's superpowers. Yeah, well, the men have superpowers as well, yet they're muscular. Why is Superman jacked, but Supergirl isn't? It's just because we as a society are used to seeing guys using anabolic steroids. We're not as used to seeing women using anabolic steroids. That's all it is. Because we've had men using anabolic steroids since in the West since 1957 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And women have only started using them in the 1980s and hasn't become widespread until across the 2010s. That's all. We're just not used to seeing it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Lord Corion, you've got the right of it. Why not just release 2 models and say one's gender swapped and get twice the money? Why erase? Why indeed? Now, I do want to point this out. I mentioned this on the live, not a live stream, but I did kind of a newsy stream about this today. And guys, if you want a Larry Elmore miniature, there's plenty. Go to Dark Sword. Look at this. Lots of female warriors in this. I have to be careful what I click because some of them are kind of cheesecakey, and I don't want to get too delisted. But here she's behind her shield, so we can kind of chance that. There you go. A Larry Elmore drawing realized as a miniature. Sword raised up, shield out. Go to Dark Sword. They're not an affiliate. They're not a sponsor of the show. But I just kind of wanted to talk about that. I wanted your take on it, Kyle, and thank you very much for sharing.
As I said, I mean, it's in a modern world, we see people who are that muscular of either gender, and they're using anabolic steroids. Mm-hmm. They're using supernatural means. And the fantasy role-playing game is about people doing supernatural stuff, so it comes down to Gygax's thing about hit points aren't realistic. Well, you've got dragons and fireballs and stuff. What do you expect? It's a game. So but, I mean, the gender swapping thing, I don't really care about the level of muscularity of the figure in that. That's it's more just like, can you be creative and just come up with a new character?
Yeah. Exactly.
Think of the superheroes where they change the superhero. They've got some more superhero and they change their gender or their ethnic background or whatever. Can't you just come up with a new one?
I agree with you 100%. I feel like this push, it says to me that whoever's doing this, they don't believe that they are creative enough. They're negging themselves. They're saying, we can't create something that you'll like, so we have to take what you do like away from you and make it something different. So then that's all you're stuck with. That's all you'll have. You'll have what we've made it into, or you'll have none at all.
Well, I think it's like I said, a lack of originality, but it's also part of that sort of corporate fear. It's like Robert Persick said in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, talking about kids in academia, students at university. Originality will get you anything from an A to an F, but imitation will get you a solid C. So they've got an incentive to do imitation. But what I would say is that imitation, which masquerades as originality, gets you a B. So a lot of times they do imitation that masquerades as originality. And so that's why we get endless reboots of superhero movies and stuff like that, because they're like, if we do something new, it might fail. But if we can't just keep putting out the same old one forever. So what we'll do is we'll put out something old, but with a twist on it. it'll be a bit different. This time it's a woman, or this time it's a man, or this time it's set in the 25th century instead of the 10th century or whatever. They do a twist on it. And, that can work sometimes. That can work. I saw it was Ian McKellen. There was a version of Richard III, and instead of being set in 13th century, whatever it was, England, it was set in 1930s England with a sort of an English civil war, like the Spanish Civil War, with Richard III being a brutal dictator. Going, I can smile and murder while I smile, and it worked really well. So I think, it's just the same old story and the same old words, but they've transplanted it in time. So that worked pretty well. But I think it's unusual to work well. I think they usually watch it. So, I as a DM, I don't mind plagiarism, I do it all the time. But I think if people are putting hundreds of millions of dollars into the product, they should probably be able to hire somebody who's original, not me.
You're going really robotic on us, Kyle. Can you maybe go outside?
All right, I'll drop out and I'll head inside because I think the internet connection is better inside.
All right, we'll see you in a minute. Anyway, I just I did a video about it today, guys. Please go check out the video if you want like my full thoughts on it. Like I said, I think it's gaslighting. I think it's vandalism. I think it is it's absolutely disrespectful, particularly when Larry Elmore had this to say about it, and let me see if I can will this come up? Yeah, there we go. Larry Elmore, fantasy artist. This is from his Facebook page. It's a man. Gary didn't know what he wanted. All he wanted was something simple that would jump out at you. He wanted a male warrior. If it was a woman, you would know it, for I'm pretty famous for painting women. There was never a question in all these years about the male warrior. No one thought it was a female warrior. Whoever thought it was a female warrior is quite crazy and do not know what they're talking about. This is stupid. I painted it. I should know. And that's really the last of it, guys. That's unless Kyle's got something that he wants to talk about it with, then as far as I'm concerned, it's a done deal for discussion here. We're going to go over this again when we do the Nerd Council of Doom this weekend. Myself and Yang Yan Zhao, and of course, the Dungeon Minister, Father Aaron, we will be Nerd Council of Dooming over on his channel. So we'll get the links up for you so you can follow us over there. We're going to talk about this and a whole raft of other things. But I was absolutely willing. I started the week off feeling fairly charitable towards Wizards of the Coast. I was like, hey, I don't mind them stopping with the salami slicing on source books. I don't really necessarily think that's a bad thing. Yeah, let's see how this goes. And then bam, right out of the chute, this. Elvin made in once Tanalasta and Alucer Obarkaskir as figurines. Those two are inspirational, and it really offends me that they chose men and turned it into women, ignoring my beloved characters. Well, I hope you get them, Emmy. I hope you absolutely get them. So yeah, there's a lot we could say about that, but again, we're going to save it for the Nerd Council of Doom. Now, one thing that I do have going on tomorrow, as we are midweek, it's hump day. Tomorrow, Sky Hernstrom will be here. I'm excited about that. Sky is an awesome pulp fantasy author. He is an artist. I've been sharing up some of his comic strips on my Twitter account. But yeah, Sky's going to be here. We're going to talk about anything we want to. I guess one might say sky's the limit. Okay, wasn't that funny? Anyway, so yeah, Sky will be here tomorrow, and then Friday, of course, we're going to be playing some Gamma World, and that's going to be pretty awesome. So I'm looking forward to that. Emmy, I'll take your word for that. I am not the Greyhawk. So yeah, if you guys are talking Forgotten Realms, I'll have to take your word on it. Let's see if we can get Kyle dialed in. Come in, Radio Melbourne.
Hey, buddy.
We are hearing you loud and clear. Good morning to you, sir. All right. So anyway, did you have anything else you wanted to go forward with on that topic, Kyle?
I don't know. Did you hear my last bit where I just said basically you can expect plagiarism from a GM who's working for free, but people who are paid millions of dollars should probably be original.
I did not hear that, but I agree with it altogether. I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, if people are paying for this, yeah, I think there's probably a lot of people who bought Grenadier miniatures and maybe used some soft nose needle nose pliers to try and bend a guy to make him look like that, or maybe in the modern times they've tried their hand at some 3D software to get that guy. Maybe they were kind of excited about, hey, I finally got the Red Dragon Warrior, and it's not the guy. So yeah.
Well, also it just looked like the figurine they had just looked like a small head. Female heads tend to be a bit rounder shaped rather than broad jawed and stuff. However, if they use anabolic steroids to the extent where they get huge muscles, they also tend to get broader jaws. That's not universally true. There are some like Anavar that are not as and don't have as much of an androgenic effect. But sometimes they'll talk and you'll see this great muscular physique and the woman looks great and then she says hello.
That was okay. So we had this situation. This was something. By the way, I just want to share this real quick in case you're wondering why this is sitting back there. Again, guys, if you want a Larry Elmore female warrior, Dark Sword miniatures, right there. I don't know what her BMI or her body fat score is, Kyle, and frankly, I don't care. But there you go, guys.
The normal amount of body fat, and that is just both the male and the female ones suffer from incomplete armor.
I don't know.
But
I think
that's all right. As all these action movies have taught us, in these fantasy movies, the armor doesn't work anyway. The guy's wearing full chainmail, and the sword just goes straight through it. Like, why does anyone bother wearing armor?
Very true.
It doesn't work anyway. So that's a kind of a pet hate of mine. Like in fantasy, they're either underclad in armor, and in the fantasy movies, it doesn't work.
James Seymour was asking, are these 28 millimeter? Yes, but they do have some what they consider I guess you would call it trophy pieces that are like 54 or 72. So just double check as you look at the order page over on Dark Sword Miniatures to make sure you're not getting like something you'd sit on a bookshelf. Although I suppose she'd work as a storm giantess if she's 72 millimeters tall. But anyway,
Safi never understood nearly naked warriors. Well, it's partly for style. But also historically, they did occur. But that was more because they didn't have either the technology or the resources to be able to equip everyone in armor. Like a book that I got a while back, and we talked about on the show one time. They talked about the things involved in making plate armor. Mm-hmm. There was a whole team of guys that were contracted by Henry VIII to supply 12 suits of plate mail annually. And that was a whole team of guys, and they were paid thousands of pounds to do it. It was just a very slow process because you have to be able to make steel, and then you have to be able to make steel ingots. Then you have to be able to mill them and flatten them out into a plate, and you have to be able to bang the plate into the appropriate shape. And the one of the jobs was locksmith. One of the jobs on the armor making team was locksmith. And the locksmith didn't make locks like that you stick your key in, but locks, little interchanges between the different bits of plate, so they'd articulate against each other. So it was a very intricate process in that. So they weren't going to give 10,000 soldiers armor like that, not because it didn't work or wasn't effective, but it's just too expensive and time consuming. They just didn't have the resources, and in earlier periods they didn't have the technology. It's one of the reasons that a sword was considered a status symbol. It was actually hard to make 3 foot of good steel and not have it just break as soon as you smacked it on something. It was much easier to make, this 6 to 12 inch spearhead. And
just so
you could make half a dozen of those for the amount of steel that went into one sword. So the sword meant that you were well off enough to be able to do that.
That was, you're talking about different grades of steel and that sort of thing. That always cracks me up about the katana. You get the weebs who are like, oh, it's been folded and beaten 1,500 times. It was folded and beaten 1,500 times because Japan had shit steel. They've always had shit steel. That's part of the reason why they invaded Manchuria, was to get better material resources, including metal. The Japanese swords, they didn't have superior sword making techniques. They just couldn't smelt the steel they had worth a damn. They had to flatten it out and fold it and flatten it out and fold it and flatten it out and fold it. It was no different than a scimitar.
And that's also why they didn't have plate mail.
Yeah, exactly. Their stuff was lacquered bamboo.
Because that worked better than trying to make a plate steel, which usually just broke. So broke in the tempering process.
Exactly. So, all right, we got it made. Let's dip it in oil to quench it. Crack, damn it.
Yeah. All right, where's that guy with the bamboo?
Yeah, exactly. There's literally like a week of work, and the minute we try to quench it, it shatters. So yeah. But I was gonna
more like months of work once you put in all the the iron ore mining and the roasting of the iron ore and all the rest.
Yeah.
Grace Jones dressing like that. Going to the destroyer. Yeah, well, I mean, and also in very hot climates, there could be a reason for not wearing armor. There was a story of some Australian soldiers going over to a sunny place in Africa where they had Vietnam War era body armor, and they wore it for a few days, and everyone was like fainting from heat exhaustion, and so they decided to discard it. Because it was only going to protect them against fragmentation anyway, not from rifle rounds, and they're more likely to encounter rifle rounds. But then, so the story goes, they heard that the locals believed that the armor was bulletproof, and so if they were wearing it, they wouldn't shoot at them. So they decided to wear it, because you don't get any more bulletproof than people not shooting at you at all. So
very true. I remember reading something kind of similar. There were Iraqi units, and even up to like small unit commanders, who believed that inside the bulk of American combat armor were personal cooling systems. They were literally wearing air conditioned armor, and there was an American officer. He was meeting with his Iraqi counterpart, and they were kind of, it was a little Monday morning quarterbacking, and the Iraqi comments, well, of course you guys beat us. You could stay in the field longer. You have that cooling unit built into your body armor. And he was like, what are you talking about? I say, yeah, you guys have got like an air conditioner built into that, don't you? And he was like, come here, let me put this on you. And he's like, yeah, just take a walk, just take a brief walk around the courtyard. And the guy was like, he's like, no, there's no air conditioner in here, mate. You can have this back. It's like, yeah, and we suffered through that. The soldier was talking about himself and his unit. It's like, yeah, we had to wear that stuff in combat. So yeah, it was not air conditioning. It was absolutely miserable for us to wear. But anyway, yeah. So that was the thing that went on.
This is a good one. All right. So, and
I got one. I'm gonna put up too, just because this is just really cool.
They've changed their interface. StreamYard here. So it used to just say add to stream, but now it doesn't. All right.
All right, try and add it, because I got a pretty cool fantasy-ish themed bit of science when you get that one. Emmy says, I'm drawing mushroom and potato pie for your magazine. You're so hungry and trolling over. Don't eat the paper, Emmy. It's not nutritious, darling.
No, it's just not working. It's not.
Okay. Well, send me the link real quick in the back room, and I'll share it up for you. And while you're doing that, I'm gonna bring this one up, because this is really cool. And I do want to remind everybody again, the government does not want you to know, but the elves down at the park, they're free. You can take as many as you want. Nobody cares. I have 16 now in my backyard at home. So just grab some. But anyway, so let's gold dust spewing volcano leaves boffins baffled as it leaks crystals worth 5,000 pounds each day. You want to climb up on a volcano with a butterfly net, Kyle, and see if you can see if you can pull down 5,000 pounds in gold dust. So this is scientists reckon extreme heat causes molten rock to rise up from the Earth's interior. Yes, that is how that works. Along with gold particles that get carried to the surface before crystallizing. And this is where's my pointer? There it is. The world's tallest volcano has long left scientists baffled as it spews a daily amount of gold dust that is worth a small fortune. And I have dropped my mouse. Hang on a second. Can I get a super for a trackball, please? Anyway, this is Mount Erebus, Mount Erebus in Antarctica, which, if you people aren't students of Lovecraft, please don't go poking around mountains in Antarctica. But yeah, so one of Antarctica's 138 active volcanoes, it's known for emitting pockets of gas containing approximately 80 grams of gold. So there you go. It's spewing a small fortune worth of gold every day. So it's coming from a volcano, and it's in the middle of Antarctica. Somehow, I think the extraction charges are just not going to get covered for whatever you would get out of it.
There is you can actually have holidays in Antarctica. They've got glamping in Antarctica. Little domes you can go to, and the chef prepares you meals and stuff, and you go on little hikes and see penguins and stuff. And it costs like US $120,000 for 2 weeks or something. Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, it's got a lower death rate than trying to climb Everest. So.
Oh, that's true. That's true. James Seymour wants to know what the bromance between Kyle and I. We both had pretty sensitive bullshit detectors, and they were pinging off the scale over at the RPG site. And Kyle and I were like, "Are you believing this?" So when I started my show, I invited Kyle on as a safe haven. Emmy has been captured.
I don't remember what bullshit was on the RPG site in particular.
I don't. It's something Pundit was saying, probably. This is fake news. I have not kidnapped Elven Maid in. She's quite safe wherever she is. But anyway, so Kyle has something to add to the stage. Let's bring this up here. What do we have today, Kyle? A great.
Well, we're just looking at is this a realistic level of muscularity for a man? I'm sorry to tell you, lads, no. If you come to my gym, you are not going to look like that. Sorry.
So you don't provide axes and shields and broadswords, Kyle? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, no. Even if you were to BYO, your weapons, you still are not going to look like that. Doesn't matter how long you train or how much you eat, it's not going to happen. So my point is simply, it's all unrealistic. So we shouldn't be picking on the girls for being unrealistic, because it's all silly. I mean, look at his stupid axe anyway. How does that axe work with this massive massive head?
I don't know. That handle is like the diameter of a screwdriver handle, and not even a particularly good one. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you got to give over on. And thank you very much for the super, Cornelius. Trackball fund. I no kidding aside, like 3 times trying to record a video today, clatter. So I'd have to pause, wait, pick up the mouse, and then go through and edit it. I hate editing videos because it means I have to hear what I'm saying, and I hate that even more. Oh, we lost Kyle. Did he leave a message? No, he did not. All right, well, hopefully Kyle will be back in just a minute. Conan cut Wolverine's hand off in What If. It'd grow back. Thank you, Miss Bella Games. Another tenor. Thank you. You're back.
Yeah. It asked me to log in, so of course it logged me out first.
Oh my God. Daniel points out there are AD&D stats for Conan. I feel a fool. I really wish I'd gotten the CM1 and CM2 Conan modules, but I didn't.
I had them back in the day, but it was lost along with a bunch of other stuff in my homeless period.
Do you remember anything notable about them? About the Conan modules?
No, I don't. I don't remember what was in them at all. It was all a long time ago, and as I've said before, I'm not very good at using modules. I read them through once for ideas to plagiarize, and then completely forget about them.
Well, I've said before, man, there are classics, and they're classics for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Emmy says her ideal man is Drew McIntyre. You should check him out. He's hot and he looks like Conan. I'll take your word for that, Emmy. So the modules we're talking about, let me see. I don't know if these are on drive-through because they have photos from Universal Film Group. But let's see. I think it was, what is it? Conan Unchained. Well, let's just try Conan. That should probably get me just a crap ton of hits. But I would be shocked if the the Conan modules are not there.
On what this the Asean?
Let's see. So Conan Unchained. This is the Wikipedia page, but Wikipedia. Anyway, thank you guys very much. Thank you for the supers tonight, Lord Koron, Miss Bella.
Apparently, they aren't well regarded. Conan Unchained and Conan Against Darkness, even a near mint, according to the Aseum, is only worth $55 or $35.
Well, that means that if you go on eBay to buy one, they're they'll be $199 and no offers. I know what I got. Yeah. You ever see that, ever poke around your local for sales, Kyle, and people have got just like a Hilux that has holes in the bed you can throw a football through, yours or Mike, guy, and it's like, $8,300, no low balls. I know what I got.
Yeah, I've got a friend who sends me like listings from Facebook Marketplace going, oh, this, $200 for this piece of Verge rubbish. Because we got the hard rubbish days, and people just put out their old TVs or whatever out on the street, and usually, like, unless it's complete actual rubbish, like a door frame that's been broken in half or something, somebody will be along and collect it within half an hour, literally within half an hour. Even without, it's only complete waste that actually makes it to the, because we call up the council and get them to come and pick it up the next day. And it's only complete waste they get to pick up, because anything else somebody will grab. We don't mind that,
Yeah, I was
uni students can furnish their apartment with the old couch and stuff.
There you go. I was out walking one day. It's been a minute or two ago. But I was walking the dog and I passed there was a computer sitting on the curb. And I kind of nudged it with my foot, and the side panel, you cut a troll in half. Do the two parts seek each other? D&D, unless you're talking about like a sort of sharpness, D&D isn't really granular like that. It's just a wound. I think if you specifically said for science, for D&D science, I am cutting this troll in half, I would say initially the two parts would seek to knit themselves back together, because that's how Poul Anderson described, like, one troll literally picks its face up off the ground when Holger's horse tears it off with its hooves. He picks his face up off the ground and fixes it back to his head. But I would say they would try for a while, and then
the monster description says that the parts seek each other out. That that the hand crawls back, because even though D&D isn't granular enough to cut off limbs and that, if the thing has been killed, reduced below 0 hit points, normally they're dead. But in the case of troll, they regenerate their hit points and come back alive. So, but it said if the parts are separated, they'll seek each other out and so on. So they've obviously anticipated that after the adventurers knock him down, that when they see him healing up, oh, well, we'll cut his arms and legs off, we'll cut his head off, well, and then that's to say, that doesn't work.
Right.
But the question would be, like, what if you cut it in half and then you burn one half and you get the other? Does it regenerate?
Well, yeah, I would think eventually it would regenerate.
In one game I played, we disposed of the body, but we kept the head, and we designed a special frame for it, that when the head grew, it grew into some spikes, and that did it some more damage. And then we mounted it on the wall of our favorite inn, and it became the Troll's Head Tavern. And so it would just go from the wall, and the young bravos of the town would come up and reach up and go, and they take bets.
I like it. I remember that. No, but anyway, I grabbed I was walking by the computer, nudged it with my foot. The side panel fell open. I could see it had a hard drive in it. I said, okay, 5 seconds of effort to slide the drive tray out, and there's like a 500 gig spinny disk hard drive in it. And it's like, okay, cool. If it doesn't work, it goes in my trash at home. If it does work, hooray. And I'm walking up the street, and I see this pickup truck just come blast it way too fast for our neighborhood. I was like, Jesus, where are these guys going? And I'm like a block down by now. And I hear the squeal of tires as they stop. And this guy gets out of the truck and goes over and like grabs the PC and puts it in his truck. I'm like, All right, dude. That's like a Pentium 4 with 256 megs of RAM. I think I got the best of it, but I mean, he was gonna get that computer. He was getting that computer, man. He was just blasting up our little residential street there to get that PC. So yeah, you know, no low bidders, blah blah blah, whatever. But anyway, to go back to fantasy stuff, yeah, I think if you destroy the half that you cut, even if it's just like an arm, eventually a whole troll is going to grow back from just the arm, which is why they're so dumb, right? Once upon a time, trolls were kind of smart, but they've had to grow back from toes and eyeballs and fingers and just a wet liver lying in a corner of the dungeon that, like, the ability to produce glial cells and neurocytes and has gone down.
They must be good for stem cell research. The same DM that let us mount the troll's head in the tavern, he also said that before, if they knew a fight was coming up, the trolls would start punching each other in the head, because you know the healing only starts like 3 rounds or whatever after they started the fight. They would figure that out after a while, and therefore, as fight starts, they punch each other in their head. That's how they warm up for the fight. You know, the human fighters are limbering up. But the trolls are like, smack, smack, smack.
Okay, so I want to put this to the audience, and I want to put it to you, Kyle. Okay. Now, an interesting item that a lot of people tend to overlook, and I'm going to bring this up on screen here, and let's see. Stop sharing and bring this back, is the Ring of Regeneration. And it's always had an interesting quirk in it. And I want to talk to you about this, Kyle. So let's see. Of Regeneration. It's a handy magic item. It's mentioned that monsters can use magic items, and that comes up specifically that you could have one on the thin and rubbery finger of a troll. A troll with a Ring of Regeneration. Gary just hates people. But why isn't the acid working? But let's take a look at this, because this is a kind of a fascinating magic item, and I wanted to, let's see. Here we go.
Dirty history and hobbies. I would rule that trolls are edible, like any other meat. Whether they taste good or not is another matter. But they are edible. But you don't necessarily want that big troll steak in your stomach, because as it regrows,
yeah,
you get the. There was a movie in 1979 made about something like that.
Yes, indeed, there was. Okay, so
in fact, the troll could do an attack like that. Like, he cuts off his own hand and then he shoves it in your mouth.
Kyle misses Traveler. He needs body horror. All right. So here we go. This is the Ring of Regeneration. And by the way, I go with dirty history and hobbies because mentioned in and I tend to think that a lot of Wormy is canon for D&D, but yeah, the trolls are poison, that you can't eat trolls. So let's look at this. Ring of Regeneration. There's 2 forms. The standard ring restores 1 hit point of damage and will replace lost limbs or organs eventually, also per turn. Now, here's the thing. It will bring the wearer back from death. But if poison is the cause, the saving throw must be made, or else the wearer dies again from the poison in his or her system. Only total destruction of all living tissue by fire or acid or similar means will prevent regeneration. Of course, the ring must be worn, and its removal stops the regeneration process. As the rare form is the vampiric regeneration ring, bestows 1/2 of the value of the original hit points of damage the wearer inflicts upon opponents in hand-to-hand, melee, non-missile, non-spell combat immediately upon its wearer. Fractions dropped. Does not otherwise cause regeneration or restore life, limb, or organ. To determine which type of ring, roll percentile. And 91 to 100 is vampiric regeneration. In no case can the wearer's hit point total exceed that initially generated. This is the interesting clause, Kyle, and I want your opinion, and anyone out there in the audience, I want your opinion on this too. It will bring the wearer back from death. Jim just died, 16 arrows to the head. He looks like the damn Statue of Liberty. Pop the ring of regeneration on him. Kyle, you as a DM, system shock roll or no system shock roll? Do the people just regenerate and then they're fine?
Well, that depends on the optional rules that you've used about when death occurs. Because there's that optional rule like that you're dead at -10 or
right, dead at -10, dead at -3 in a single hit, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So that would depend on those rules. So if you've just got those standard rules, then I would say, yeah, it'll bring them back from death if you put the ring on. It doesn't have to be there beforehand, though it does risk a bit of rorting the system that you basically use it as a ring of resurrection then.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, Bob died, Jim died, Mary died, just put the ring on until they come back to life, and then we'll continue adventuring. I see what you're saying there, but
so it becomes a ring of resurrection, and you'd also kind of have to draw the line somewhere, because there's also that level of damage where the character is no longer just dead, they're actually burger mints.
Right.
Or they're fried. Like if you're at -40 hit points, are you dead or are you just charred ash from the fireball or whatever?
Pink mist smeared across the wall.
Is there anything to put the ring on? Does it count if you just put the ring in the pile of ashes?
Yeah, let's scrape Bob together. Well, it does say, what is it? Total destruction of living tissue by fire or acid or similar means. So I would say anything that would have similar means to reduce you to particulate matter would definitely fall under the total destruction clause. Here's what I want to know. Let's take the circumstance, regardless of the wearer always has the ring, we slip it on the wearer's finger, or we slip it on the finger of the deceased and they come back. Do you have them make a system shock roll?
Yeah. If you were dead and you brought back, you have to make a system shock roll.
Okay.
That's true with resurrection and all the rest.
All right. So audience, what do you guys think? System shock roll, no system shock roll? And I would point out that reincarnation, just to kind of, there's no ring of reincarnation, but reincarnation does not require system shock roll, and it's available for any living thinking creature. Now,
because the thing is that a system shock is about surviving a shock to your system. But reincarnation, you get a new body. It's a new system. So
right, and I think our thinking is very similar there.
Yeah, it's like, does my computer survive this blow? Well, in that system, with this view, the soul is the software, and what happens to the software and what happens to the computer are different. Enough damage to the computer makes the software inaccessible. But if you've got a copy of the software, if you physically pull the hard drive out and then smash the computer, you can slot the hard drive into something else. That's reincarnation. Regeneration is repairing the computer, repairing the hardware.
That's fair enough. And I like that take. I do like that take. But this is kind of open a can of worms. And I want to go down this because you and I have not discussed enough D&D, and we haven't talked about enough spherical cow arguments, Kyle. So I think it's high time we did that. So
does that it could be a bit rorty, but the only time in recent years that I've had ring regeneration pop up in my campaign, it was also a cursed one. It was a ring of vampiric regeneration, and it was cursed that was the only way that the wearer could heal.
Huh. I like that.
So,
I like that a lot, yeah.
So he had to inflict damage in order to heal, which had the nasty side effect that if he was ever rendered unconscious, that's it. He would die. His limit was now 0 hit point, because when you're unconscious, and he said, like, wouldn't someone be able to pick up my hand and slap themselves with it? And I said, no, because you are not inflicting the damage. They're using you to inflict the damage on themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a cursed item, and it gradually turned in. The campaign didn't last that long, but it was inevitably going to turn into evil, because they're like, well, okay, they had the opportunity to go to a cleric and get the curse removed and get rid of the ring, but he didn't want to. So he was starting to look at passing peasants. He's going on, I'm only on 6 hit points. He's looking at passing peasants. Can't I just slap him around a bit?
Just a couple of punches. It's not going to kill him,
Yeah. So he was inevitably going to gradually do an alignment shift to evil.
Oh, I can imagine. So let's talk a little bit about reincarnate then. Now, druids is fairly clear, because there's actually an example in the Dungeon Master's Guide. But druids, you come back mostly as animals. You can come back as a dryad or a centaur, which of course has a human-like torso, or an elf, a gnome, a human, a pixie. But by and large, you've got woodland creatures there. So you can come back as a badger. And the Dungeon Master's Guide mentions like a low-level badger who then begins to gain hit dice. But let's say you're a human. Bob the Fighter. Bob, we have abused you so much on this show, and I apologize. Kyle, I'm sure, feels a little bit of sympathy for Bob, but it's time once again to suffer an ignominious fate at the hands of curious gamers. All right. So Bob the human bites the dust. No high-level cleric, but we've got a druid to hand, or a magic user, because magic users can do reincarnate at fairly low level. But we're going to get to magic user reincarnation in just a minute. So let's say you come back as, I don't know, a centaur is a good example, because there's one in Rogue's Gallery. But if we look over in the monster manual, let's see. Let's pop over and find, nope, that's satyr. We'll just zip up here. Sorry if I gave anyone a dizzy spell there. Let's look at the centaur. Centaurs have 4 hit dice. Bob bit the big one when he was 5th level. So Kyle, Bob gets reincarnated. Does he come back as a 4 hit dice centaur, or as a 1st level centaur of 1 hit dice?
He comes back as himself. If he's a 1st level fighter, he comes back as a 1st level fighter in the body of a centaur. If he's a 3rd level fighter, he comes back as a 3rd level fighter in the body of a centaur, and so on. He's reincarnated. His soul is in the body, and his soul. So like his wisdom and charisma are all that of him.
Moving the hard drive and motherboard and CPU to a different PC case is what you're saying, right?
Yep.
Okay. So let's take a look then at magic.
So there may be limits. Like if he comes back as a pixie and tries to wield his greatsword, he might have trouble. So he has the physical abilities of the new body. He has the skill. So he has the skill to wield the greatsword, but he's not strong enough to do so.
All right. So Bob the Fighter bites the dust again. And this time the druid has said, look, you're on your own. However, There is a friendly magic user nearby who's willing to once again cast Reincarnate, which I should point out again does not require System Shock roll. Well, this time Bob is either very lucky or very unlucky, depending on your point of view, and comes back in the body of an ogre mage. I think I know what you're going to say about this, Kyle, but I do want to hear it. Does Bob then have the Ray of Cold, the Polymorph Self, the Fly, the Invisibility, the ESP of the ogre mage, or does he have to learn those abilities? What do you say?
Well, I'd say it depends how you see the abilities. So are they spell-like or are they spells, basically? So if they're spell-like abilities, they might be inherent in the body of the creature, like a dragon's wings helping him flap around. But if they're actual spells requiring casting and material components and stuff, then no, it doesn't have knowledge of them.
All right, well, let's look at the ogre mage then. Ogre magi are able to perform the following feats of magic: fly, become invisible, cause darkness, polymorph to human or similarly bipedal form, and regenerate. I'm sorry, I said ESP, but they don't regenerate. Once per day, they can also do the following: charm person, sleep, assume gaseous form, and create a ray of cold. So it doesn't say, it says feats of magic, and it says they can do any of the following, which seems magic-like, but there's no mention of spell books, of game levels, or anything like that. So would you then say that these are just inherent ogre mage abilities? And when Bob
I would say they're inherent. So, like thinking of the dragon example, the dragon's inherent ability to cause fear to less than one hit dice creatures, that's an inherent ability. But the spells that dragons have are spells.
Right. They have to have dragon spell books or scrolls or what have you.
Yeah. And wave their hands around for the somatic component and stuff, or their claws. But
well, what about you guys? What do you guys out in the audience think? Is this something that when a player is reincarnated, not raised back, but when they're reincarnated, what do you, the audience, what do you deem happens? And I realize this is like, we're off in the upper right-hand corner of the envelope. It's like, okay, but what if in a Battletech game, I had a perfect mint condition Atlas with no armor damage and full ammo? I get it. We could get very edge casey with this, but it's fun to speculate. So what do you think, audience? Let's hear it from you.
I had an ogre mage confront an adventuring party once, and he was flying around, and so they cast light on his eyes and blinded him. So he was going around like a moth, bashing into walls and things. Which I was sort of, I was both disappointed and relieved at. You know, you have that disappointment where you have that monster that you think is going to mess up the party, but you're also relieved because you think, oh, actually, maybe it was going to be a TPK.
Yeah.
So it worked well because, you know, they're pretty tough, those things.
Yeah, I've got a party, you know, they're 7th or 8th level. They should be able to take down a couple of ogre mages.
But no, they were 3rd level. So,
oh, Lord.
2nd and 3rd level.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, though, you throw a couple of ogre mages at a 7th level party, they open up from invisibility with 2 8d8 rays of cold. And it's just like, sorry, guys.
I like that question Elvin made. Would a reincarnate as a newborn, toddler unicorn? That's a fair question, actually. You reincarnate and you come back as a newborn. You have to grow into adulthood.
Well, you know what? That's actually a an interesting question. And I'm gonna let's see.
I would say basically that's a gameplay thing. So if you're doing some one-on-one play, yeah, why not? Then you get to play the character growing up as a unicorn. If you're doing it in a game group, it'd be a bit disruptive that you have to wait, 18 years or whatever for the ogre mage to grow to adulthood. So You were just, no, he comes back. He comes back ready to go.
Okay, so this refers to the druid spell, but I see no reason not to apply this to the magic user spell. Regardless of the form of the creature which the character is reincarnated, allow the new form to progress as far in characteristics as far as possible in characteristics and abilities. For example, a badger character could grow to giant size, have maximum hit points plus bonus for a high constitution, and the intelligence level of its former character. A centaur reincarnation might eventually gain hit dice up to 5, 6, 7, or even 8, and it would be eligible to wear armor, use magic items, etc. Now, Gary says gain up to 5, 6, 7, or even 8. And that kind of speaks a little bit to what Emmy was asking and what we were discussing earlier, which was the idea of where do you start? And I think with Gary saying here that they could gain up to 5, 6, 7, or 8 indicates that they're meant to start at maximum hit dice, which is not to say, Emmy, that the toddler unicorn wouldn't be a toddler, but just they would have the full hit dice. It's like, oh, a unicorn full that happens to have 62 hit points, something like that. So I think it can be either or. The lizard man in Gary's party was yes, that is correct. Again, we were talking earlier about Rogue's Gallery, and there are at least 2 reincarnated characters in there. There is the lizard man and the aforementioned centaur that got brought into the game because of reincarnation. So there you go. Interesting stuff. I like the idea of having, a little tiny badger character walking around. You'd have to have him custom armor and weapons made. Red wall kind of guy walking around there. The bartender's like, hey, get your pet badger off the bar. It's very uppity with the bartender. It could be a lot.
Badger says, wait.
Bring me a saucer of beer, you pillock.
Yeah, your fantasy game is starting to turn into Narnia. If you get that, with that sort of thing going on.
Heaven forfend we draw from the works of C.S. Lewis, Kyle. Oh, no, not that. Mike Wilson Art says they should have made centaurs as PC. Don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Although I will say, if I was playing a PC and he got reincarnated as a centaur, the first player who asked, can I have a ride, would get punched in the face. I would just flip around and be like, bap. Wave of Mutilation has been a member for 9 months. Thank you very much. Wolverine can't regenerate limbs. I have seen you guys over in the chat talking about Wolverine and he gets run over with a steamroller, and what if Punisher did something, or what if he got burned by Phoenix? I don't know, guys. I've been out of comics for decades, so that conversation is very, very strange. It would be a cool quest though, reincarnated as a toddler elf, then find older spell to bring player back to part. Just cast haste on them. Haste will age your character. Just haste on them over and over.
Do they age them, or do they mature them though?
I ain't touching that.
Because you can get older without maturing. We know examples of this. We all know examples of this kind of person.
You're getting into some Star Trek Search for Spock Pon Far level stuff there, Kyle, and I don't know that we have the infrastructure.
I have a trainer friend who unfortunately for him works with a lot of guys in our age group, middle-aged men, and some of them have what we call a Peter Pan syndrome. They have the bit of their youth that they want to retain, or in many cases never had. And he had a 46-year-old obese diabetic guy contact him wanting training. Oh yeah, okay, that's a normal sort of profile, 46 years old, obese diabetic. The guy wants to become a professional boxer.
Oh.
Well, in Australia, you can't do the Mike Tyson thing or whatever, or the George Foreman thing. You can't get a boxing license after 39 years old. Even after 34 years old, you have to have had a boxing license in the last 3 years. And you get licensed for one fight. You don't get, here's your license for 2 years. You get licensed for one fight. So technically, that's amateur. Professional, you have to have been amateur in the past. And you have to have a doctor's note from the last 2 weeks saying you're fit to fight. No doctor's going to give you a note. As a 46-year-old or 50-year-old guy, no doctor's going to give you a note to say that you can fight. So there's these guys that, yeah, they've aged, but not matured.
No, that's I want to be a boxer. No, you want to be a tough guy in the gym who goes down and works with like the heavy bag and, you know, the medicine.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, anyone could join a boxing gym, but yeah. I think this is probably a 46-year-old guy who's never experienced being punched hard in the face. Like, if you have, you wouldn't be nostalgic for it. I read recently thing, like, because there's some younger people now who wish that we didn't have social media and stuff like that, and they're nostalgic for the 1980s and that, even though they didn't grow up with them. Apparently there is some Greek word meaning nostalgia for a time that you never actually experienced. And I think there's a similar thing going on there with it. The guy, he's nostalgic for being punched in the face, even though he never actually experienced it. Because if you have experienced it, you wouldn't be nostalgic for it.
I in no way would be happy to go through something that literally every blow to my head was reducing my IQ and increasing by whole percentage numbers the chances that I would have Alzheimer's dementia. I'm going to pass on that. That's not a sport. That's an institution.
Well, even with that, just that moment of, I mean, that's how I got this beautiful face. You know, it's
it's
not fun. I don't recommend it.
I think what it is, Kyle, is Gen Xers. You know, they rented Snatch, the movie, and saw like the Brad Pitt fights. Like, that looks badass. I want to do that. No,
I don't think he was 46 though.
Yeah,
and the fact is, it's remember he goes to the he goes to the cancer support group, and there's the obese guy with boobs.
That's Fight Club. Yeah, that's
and gets embraced in the guy's bosoms, and so it's basically the guy trying to go from that to being Brad Pitt, and that doesn't happen. So
that doesn't happen. Never happened. And he says we're all nostalgic for medieval times that we never experienced. We play TTRPGs because of that.
So.
Yeah. Exactly. And I always, my wife was very active in SCA when I started dating her the second time around. And I used to tease her, and I'd just get hate stares from her and her friends when I would go to the SCA weekends. And I'm like, okay, how many of you guys have typhus? Remember, if any of you can read, if it's not in Latin, I'm gonna have to report you to somebody to be burned alive or thrown in a river and have rocks dumped on top of you. I smell soap. Who's the whore? You know, which again is not exactly true of how the Middle Ages were, but I would tease them. It's like, no, you guys are not recreating anything. You're LARPing. But we have an actual question from the audience. And James Seymour, to you, Kyle, wants to know, what's your best RPG experience and or memory?
I have so many, and Bill's heard all the stories, and regular listeners have heard all the stories. But you know, my first one was starting gaming, April Fool's Day, April Fool's Day, and I had James Roberts, the fighter, who immediately got nicknamed by the rest of the party Jim Bob. And I was playing with Paul Tyrrell, my friend, and Jevon Desailly, who was the DM. It was year 7 at Princes Hill High School. And his highest stat was strength, 10. We rolled 3 to 6 down the that was his
Oof.
highest stat. And he also rolled the minimum amount of money. And so he went and bought himself a shield, a helm, and a sword. And then I said, I go gambling, then I'll get more money and I can buy some better gear. So I went gambling and I lost it all. It's dead broke. So the innkeeper gave me a day's iron rations and a torch out of sympathy. Torch and a sack out of sympathy. I think I bought the sack already, but anyway. So I went off and adventured and had some success. And then Jim Bob perished at 3rd level, ingloriously fighting a gelatinous cube. While Paul's magic user ran away. It was like, being absorbed by the gelatinous cube.
Well, there you go. There you have a great tale from college. I don't tell mine.
I don't know how he survived till 3rd level, but anyway. So, but stupid fighters surviving. That's the other story. I was DMing a game. It was a one-off, going to my friend Emil's place. He had this sort of, not a granny flat, but like a big room out the back. He says it's full of junk now and you can't game there, but it had this massive table there. It was like 8 or 10 of us there or something, and we game. And this guy Colin rolled up Cag the fighter, and he rolled up 1 hit point. And I just said, let the dice fall where they may. You go for it. And so Colin decided that Cag thought he was invincible. And I said, how does that work? He's got 1 hit point. And he said, yeah, but you don't know how many hit points you've got. You just know whether or not you've survived fights. And if Cag has 1 hit point, then as soon as he gets hit, he goes down. So Cag must never have been hit. Therefore, Cag thinks he's invincible. So
that is some Douglas Adamsian logic right there. If I can't
more like Terry Pratchett, but yeah. And so so Cag the fighter, he went at the head of the party. He didn't let the thief go at the head of the party. He went the head of the party into the dungeon. He didn't bother checking for traps. And he just strode on through. He made every saving throw. Every wandering monster missed him. He made it right to the end. Or it wasn't the end of the whole dungeon, but it was like one of the major rooms in the dungeon. And there was a basilisk that was in this magical pool full of treasure. And he evaded the basilisk's gaze. And he jumped on the back of the basilisk and wrestled it and stabbed it in the neck with his dagger and killed it. And so he then had enough experience points and money to level up. And I said, so you go and do that? And he said, no, I retire. I said, but you might roll 10 hit points next time. He goes, no, I retire. Cag doesn't push his luck. He goes home and he just tells this story again and again to everyone that will listen and to a lot of people who won't either. And he retires.
Well, I hope he at least got a nice set of basilisk skin boots or a belt out of it so people would believe him, Hey, old Cag,
yeah. Well, I mean, he came back with the treasure, so nobody was going to argue with him, I think. If you come back with sacks of gold.
There you go. That is a lovely tale, and we will always remember you, Cag the fighter. Truly a glorious moment. Michael Cotter says unbreakable. Yeah, he's Bruce Willis, and unbreakable was Cag the fighter.
Yeah, I don't know if he was that strong, but yeah.
Yeah, or on the flip side, he could have been Mr. Glass.
But either way, yeah, he made it through. So I always use that example when, people say, do you give them extra hit points at first level or whatever? I'm like, no, because you never know what's going to happen. You just roll up your character and you go with it. You play it. If the character seems really bad, you just play them boldly, and either they'll die really quickly, you can roll up a better character, or they'll exceed your expectations. and you have great tales to tell. So,
well, there you go. I love it. It's the way it should be. You know, this discussion came up on Twitter, and I can't remember if you and I talked about this away from the stream or not, but there's a picture, and it kind of irritated me. I thought it was kind of fun, but it's a picture of like a buck knife. Like it's a knife, a belt knife that's like the size of your forearm, Kyle. This is a serious piece of steel. And technically, it would be considered a dagger, I guess. And someone added the caption, now tell me how this thing does 1d4 damage again. And I'll tell you what, it absolutely does 1d4 damage. Because if you stabbed me with that, I would die. If I stabbed you with that, you would die. We're commoners, Kyle. We have a very small pool of hit points. In AD&D, a dagger can be, yes, like a buck knife, and only do 1 to 4 points of damage. And in real life, if you stabbed me with that knife, I would probably perish unless I got immediate medical attention, and I might just perish immediately. And the same goes for anyone. No one listening on this stream is a third level fighter rocking a minimum of or an average of 15 hit points. None of us are.
Well, it doesn't anything. Look, as you've said before, you know, is it realistic that in chess the horsey goes in this L shape and jumps over other pieces? Is it realistic that the pawns move forward but attack diagonally? And that it's not about realism. It's a game.
Yeah, exactly.
There are more realistic games out there, like mine. Yeah, and it doesn't sell. So people don't want realism. The real world is too depressing.
And this does skate dangerously close to, ooh, is your game simulationist? You know, and I'm like, I don't care. I want to get together on Saturday and slay some orcs and romance some elves and loot some dragon treasure and kick down dungeon doors and make castle. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's not realistic in D&D, like the aforementioned illiteracy and typhus and apostasy and religious intolerance
and the magic and the dragons and the dungeons.
Yeah, I want those things. I don't want the other things, and I'm not going to worry about, well, you know, these people would do this and this wouldn't work like that. I know. I'm not worried about it. It doesn't.
It's like when people delve into the economy of Star Trek and go, how does it work when they've got replicators?
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, are you the same person after you've been transported through the transporter, or were you killed and you're a new person now? You know, it's when they delve into all that, it's just, you know, that's not what it's about.
Yeah, it really isn't. And if you're hung up on, why couldn't the Eagles just fly the ring to Mount Doom? I mean, they could fly into Mordor. Clearly, they did at the end. Then you have completely missed the entire point of the book. If you want to know why a Bowie knife the size of your forearm won't just slay your fighter, you have missed the entire point of the game. You've lost it. You have lost the game. So we don't worry about those things. We just have fun.
Well, yeah. If you want realism, like it's probably better for them to all do 1d6 like original D&D had.
Yeah. Well,
like I said about the firearms thing, you know, I was in the Australian Army when we changed from using the SLR, which is 7.62 millimeter, to using the Aussteyr, which is 5.56 millimeter. And while we were going through being introduced to the Steyr, somebody expressed the opinion that 5.56 was, you know, harmless and wouldn't do anything. And the sergeant said, "All right, then stand over there and I'll shoot you with it."
Yeah.
And the guy declined. So,
as folks with common sense generally will.
Well, he was he was a grunt, so. But even he had enough sense. I don't know if he's more scared of the bullet or the sergeant, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's again, I don't get caught up in realism, and neither should anyone else. I mean, there are certainly games where it's fine to not hand wave things, but I think there's a balance, right? Like Kyle, I think if you and I did a tank on tank duel demo of the Twilight 2000 version 1 rules, it'd be a while. It's very similar. It's like, okay, the SIBO went through the left front cheek armor of the T-72. Positioned in that is the commander's radio, the boxes of ammo for the coaxial gun, the gunner's seat, the water canteens for the crew. Okay, those are all listed. Now I have to start ticking off damage for each of those. That's not necessarily a good thing either. But haha, shoot, tank, blow up is a good, fun thing. And that's what we want.
Well, that's why I said one of my DME mottos is momentum over perfection. It's better to keep the game moving. It's better for the game to be a bit imperfect, but keep moving, than to have it be perfect, but it's bogged down in all the details and that, because there reaches a point where, like the combat or anything else, like the combat takes so long to resolve. By the end, you no longer care if your character lives or dies.
Yeah.
So we've had the best game story. The worst game story is one I didn't experience, fortunately, but it was an old gaming friend running GURPS, and he had them make all their characters, and it took several sessions to make the characters. And their first session, they all appeared in this cave with gargoyles. So 6 characters and 8 gargoyles. And it took 3 or 2.5 or 3 sessions for them to resolve this. And the sessions were like 3 hours. So it was like basically 8 hours. It's like a working day to resolve this combat. And in GURPS, the combat sessions are 1 second long, and it was 18 combat rounds. So it was a working day to resolve 18 seconds of combat. Yeah. Whereas I had recently run a campaign where they had a battle to determine the entire fate of the Roman Republic, and it took 20 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, the old hex and chip games could be very, very helpful for that. But I mean,
because he used all the options, and every combat round he'd say, "Oh, another thing you could do," and he'd pull out one of the splat books.
Oh man!
Give them extra options, and basically every time a player has to make a choice, that slows things down. It's one of the reasons that I prefer random roll character generation to point buy. You don't get the exact character you want, but you make do with it. See how you go. You might find yourself enjoying things you wouldn't normally try, and but by taking out the player choices, it speeds things up, so people can just sit down and start playing. It's especially important if you want to have an open game table. And
yeah.
So similarly here with combat, if there's a lot of options, if there's a lot of things that your character can do, that'll slow things right down. And looking up all the charts for it and all the rest, to resolve that after they've made the choice, it just slows things down. And so you have,
No, I was just going to say, sometimes though, I mean, even your desire to do that can be just completely usurped by the game master's sense of self-importance. This is not my horror story, but it's a fun horror story nonetheless. A friend was telling me he went to Gen Con. He and his girlfriend were at Gen Con, or maybe it was Origins. It was one of the larger gaming cons here in the States. And there was a guy running Tecumel, Empire of the Petal Throne, at this convention. And he had 2 players. He had this guy and his girlfriend were going to play with the game master. And the game master was someone from M.A.R. Barker's table, from M.A.R. Barker's gaming group. If you don't know Tecumel, go look it up. Go look it up on Wikipedia. Go look it up on RPG Geek. it's not my cup of tea, but it's very interesting. And M.A.R. Barker was certainly a world builder, and this guy had come up gaming with him. So it's a 4-hour slot, you dig, Kyle? And there's 2 people playing, and this guy. He spent about 45 minutes lecturing them on the history of the game Empire of the Petal Throne. Then he starts creating their characters, and he was like, that was like an hour and 15-minute each, because he kept bopping back and forth between them, saying, this is your character name. Okay, cool. That's my character name. I can't pronounce that. That's okay. We'll get to the pronunciation section later. And yeah, so they had basically came down to like an hour and 20 minutes of game time. And he said the funny part was it was just OD&D. Like all that crap with the languages, and learn the history of your character's name. And I'm going to explain the language of Tecumel to you, and all this falderall. And then when they actually got to swinging swords, it was just OD&D. Like, yeah. My dude. My dude.
So they wanted lots of detail in the cultural aspect, but not so much detail in the combat aspects.
Yeah, I mean, if I was like, hey, that table looks like it's got some more players, and I strolled over, I would just be like, yeah, is this just OD&D? Is this just like 3D6 down the line?
Does it really matter what imaginary language that my character cries out for his mother in as he's bleeding to death in the floor of a dungeon?
If you played with Barker's group, or apparently this guy, yeah, it does. Help. No one understands that word. A glaxel. There you go. Okay, you guys hear him calling for help and run it. I'd be like, I'm gonna go get a $21 hamburger at the hotel grill, because I can't with this.
Hey guys, if you want to play my game, you have to learn to speak Elvish.
Yeah.
Tolkien's Elvish.
Yeah. You have to speak Quenya.
Character sheet will be written in it.
God. We'll make it easy on you.
We take our gaming seriously here. You still only have 1 hit point, though.
Yeah, exactly. What's Sindarin for dead meat? David Brown said he would just start speaking Klingon. I would too. I would just be like,
Isn't Klingon Orcish?
Yeah, they're kind of the orcs of the Star Trek universe, the Klingons. I hope that doesn't offend anyone. If you're out there and you're angry, I can't help you. I can't help you. But yes. Although, okay, Kyle, did you see Return of the Jedi in the theater, Kyle, when you were a kid?
Yeah, when I was a kid, yeah. I thought you were talking about most recently, because I saw it in the cinema. The first 2 in the cinema recently.
So when you first saw Return of the Jedi, you were already a D&D player, right?
I might not have been, because that was like 83 or something.
Yeah, that was 83, so you might not have been. Well, you know what? We'll
because I don't remember relating to it in that way.
We'll just remove the time frame. When I saw Return of the Jedi,
I do remember thinking those green dudes that are the guards, because I remember by the time I didn't have any figurines. I was too poor, but I had a friend who collected all the figurines, and he had the little green guard figurines, and I thought they were like orcs.
The Gamorreans. That's right. The Gamorreans were orcs. As soon as those guys showed up on the screen when we were in the theater, I nudged my sister and I went, "They're space orcs." Because I didn't know, Games Workshop hadn't come into existence yet, so that wasn't a thing. And I think her response was something like, "Huh? Shh." But yes, the Gamorrean guard.
By that stage, I'd had Fighting Fantasy, and I mean there must have been orcs in that. I can't remember. But,
yeah. Tolkien's The only visual reference we had for Tolkien were the guys who are basically just wrapped up in rags and shot in photo negative for the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings, and Tolkien's orcs and goblins who were pretty trippy looking, but they weren't pig faced. So when we got our D&D orc with our pig faced, or D&D art with our pig faced orcs, as soon as I saw them in Jedi, I was like, orcs.
Yeah. Who in the audience had a May the 4th at their local cinema? Because we had it here that our local cinema put it on. Each of the movies, so they put the 3 original movies on the Saturday, May the 4th, and then they put the 3 prequels on the Sunday. So I took my son and a friend of his to see them. We watched, and I was really surprised. I thought the cinemas would be packed out. Because they announced it like 6 weeks beforehand or something. So I immediately booked. As soon as I got the email, I immediately booked. But we went there on the day, and out of 100 seats, just a small cinema, there were 17 of us in there watching Star Wars, and came out of that and said, "Do you guys want to see Empire?" My son had originally not wanted to see multiple ones because there were only 15 to 20 minutes between the movies, and he said, "How will we have lunch?" But they had 18 minutes of advertisements and trailers.
Yeah.
So it was actually like half an hour between. So I said, "Okay, lads, do you want to see the second one as well? You want to see Empire?" And they said, "Yep." And then I told him, "Okay, if you want to see the third one, let me know." But we couldn't see the third one because his friend James had to go home to take him home. But yeah, we saw the first 2, including the horribly CGI'd up. But it was the CGI'd one, of course. But still, it was great to see these young lads, they're 12 years old, and they were leaning right forward in their seats. And I've seen them watching TV and all the rest of shows that they like, and they're constantly chatting to each other and playing on their phones and stopping it and going and doing something else and that. But they were sitting there in the cinema and they were completely enthralled. And they said not a word through the whole movie.
That's nice.
They absolutely loved it. They absolutely loved it. There's nothing like seeing it in the cinema. And it certainly wasn't the first time for them. They've seen those things millions of times.
But I think I think Emmy's got it right. Disney has poisoned the Star Wars brand for a lot of people now. I mean, if I had known about showings here and they were knocking out like look, this is an unrestored 35 millimeter print, I'd have gone in a heartbeat. I'm not, me, Colin, I'm not that much of a dilettante, but I have kicking around here. You guys can't see it. It's on the shelf up yonder. I have the definitive collection, which is a 9 laser disc collection of the original trilogy. And this is actually a promo for it that I got from the record store that I worked at when it came out in 1990. It was the 25th anniversary, so it would be 1992. So I've got it. I need to transfer it over to DVD one day if I can get my Laserdisc player working and a good capture solution going. But I remember when they did the re-release in 97, and we saw Star Wars. I thought the CGI was pretty keen. I had a friend who worked in the film industry who was like, "This is crap. They should have cleaned up the matte lines and strengthened up the mats and nothing else." And I was like, "Dude, no, this is really cool. This is really good." And he just kind of rolled his eyes at the CGI monsters. And he's like, "I know the people who did this, Bill. That was done on 4 MacBooks." The original movies was a small warehouse full of model parts and artisans and everything. This is literally 4 Power Mac notebooks at work. It's like, whatever. And then we saw Empire, and I was down with it right up to the point of that scream. The scream. And I was just like, when Luke lets himself fall off of the platform in Cloud City. to what he presumes is his death.
Oh, right. I didn't know this.
There's no scream in the original 1980 release, nor in all of the home theater.
I didn't notice. I just noticed the dodgy CGI, like when the stupid scene when Han is walking around Jabba, and there's this jolt as he walks on Jabba's tail, and then he's like when he gestures at Jabba, and because there's a human actor standing there, the gesture would have been like 8 inches from the actor's body, but because Jabba is larger, it like his hand blurs as it goes through the body, it glitches through the body of the thing, and it was just so sloppily done. And a lot of it, like when they go through Mos Eisley and they put in the extra creatures wandering around and the Jawas falling off the big camel type creature or whatever, and it was just so cluttered. That's I think it kind of reminds me, the CGI thing reminds me of, if you look at the history of movies, when the first sound movies came out, every movie was suddenly a musical. And then when the first color movies came out, every movie was really colorful. And then sometimes they combined them, like Wizard of Oz. So I think it's kind of the same for a while, it was kind of the same with CGI. Once they had CGI, they made everything CGI. They jazzed up everything until they've, now learned to use it in a more restrained fashion. Unless you're looking at a stupid superhero movie, of course. But
yeah. So we saw Star Wars and Jedi in 97, or Star Wars and Empire in 97, and that plus some obviously reused footage from Jedi that they used at the end of Empire to show Vader going to his private shuttle. That was clearly just more of the footage from Jedi when Vader arrives in the Death Star in his shuttle. I was just like, I was just so checked out even by that point that we didn't go back and watch Jedi when it re-released a few months later. But it was nice to see Star Wars in the theater again, because I've told this story before, and
like I said, I was with a couple of kids, and kids aren't as critical as us cynical jaded blokes. So,
but the Christmas after Star Wars dropped, I got all of the, I shouldn't say all of the figures because it certainly wasn't, but I got Luke, Han, Leia, 3PO, R2, a couple of stormtroopers, a Jawa, Ben, Vader, a Tusken Raider. Oh, was there anyone else? I think that was about it. I think it was just them. And I got an X-Wing fighter. And my dad was insistent on blowing, at the time, what was a lot of money. We were not well off. But he got those for me because he saw how much I loved the movies. I had posters. I read the first tie-in book that came out, The Splinter of the Mind's Eye. I loved Star Wars as a kid. I took my Lego and made, I tried to make the Star Wars ships with a tiny amount of Lego I had and stuff. And my dad told my mom, and I didn't find this out until just a little bit after my dad passed away. My dad, when he was a kid, loved Flash Gordon. And he wanted a Flash Gordon toy, Flash Gordon rocket. And my dad's father, who was a complete piece of shit, and my dad would say that too, was never hold back about his disdain for his dad. But my dad's father told my dad's mom, "I'm not buying that for him. That's a bunch of sissy shit." And my old man didn't get to have the toys he wanted when he was a kid. And when Star Wars came out, my dad was like, "Hell yes, I'm getting him these." And so I got a great collection of figures. No, I didn't blow them up with M80s or run over them with a lawnmower. I still have them. They're up on the shelf over yonder. And in later years, like the next year, I got a Millennium Falcon and a snow speeder, I think. And yeah, I loved it. I remember distinctly standing out in the May heat there in Gadsden, Alabama at the Agricola Twin, and just being at all entirely unsure about what we were going to see, and just 2 hours of absolute rapture. It was amazing. And I loved every minute of it, and I was so glad that Dad took us. So that about wraps it for me. Kyle, you got anything else for us this evening, sir?
No. Just that I've been watching, as I told you, I've been watching Dark Matter, this series on Amazon Prime. It's from a few years back, and it's a traveler group. It's a traveler group. I'm going to just quote the bits that I said to Bill. Basically, traveler. They find, okay, so 6 characters wake up out of cryo sleep, and they don't remember who they are. I think I can just imagine that's an antagonistic GM who's like, you don't want to give me character backstories? All right, fuck you then. You don't remember who you are.
Fine. You can play at that game. You don't.
Yeah, you don't. Our names? No, you don't have names. All right, we'll name ourselves in order of when we woke up. And that's what they do. They call themselves 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. And great. Then when they do discover their backgrounds, it turns out that they're wanted criminals.
There you go.
So they pissed off the DM somehow. Somebody didn't share their snacks.
Everything that you told me about Dark Matter, it is a traveler group. It is absolutely a traveler group.
They find a dead kid in the storage. They do scans on him, and they have no idea who he is. He died from a kidney shot. He'd been shot in the kidney and bled out in this room. And they've got no idea who he is. So then they just shrug. And the one who takes charge too, she says, all right, check him for valuables and dump his body when we drop out of FTL. And somebody says, what? We're just going to dump him? I think it would be a bad idea to dock at a space station with a dead body on board.
Yep.
They're just PCs. They're so ruthless.
Conversations. This sounds exactly like our Wednesday conversations. I will close up.
What else was it? And then they go to a space station to try to offload some cargo. During leisure time, some of them go to the casino where they card count and win big. The manager pulls them aside with his goons and tells them to get the fuck out with nothing. They refuse and insist on getting their money. It ends up with a fight where they kill the casino manager and his goons and have to run back to the docks.
This is absolutely a traveler game.
Meanwhile, another crew member is getting medical treatment. They're advanced and do DNA match flesh grafts. The DNA match pings him as a wanted criminal. The doc tries to sedate him, but he spots it as dodgy and sedates the doc instead, striding out and back to the docks. A bunch of PCs.
Every part is PCs.
And there's also a guy in the group who keeps saying he wants to sell the ship and for them to go their separate ways. And he's done things like lock them off the bridge so he can try to fly away and abandon the adventure hook, and has pointed guns at other crew members. And they keep this guy. It's like, why do they keep him? Well, they keep him because, Bob the player, they don't want to offend him by telling him to leave the game table. So they find an android on the ship and they ask her name. She doesn't have one. So they just call her Android. They get her to fly the ship while they sit around and play cards and stuff. When she first woke up, she attacked them until they disabled and then reprogrammed her. Despite her showing incredible combat prowess, they leave her there on the ship while they go off on adventures. They never once ask her to help them fight or something. Occasionally, she gives them advice, which they scoff at, but which turns out to be right. So she's the GM who the players reject. Like, no, we don't want you. You don't get to play a character, DM. Go away. And then they get sent to salvage a ship. they come across dead crew members who've had throats or eyes torn out, bite marks on them. Then a crazy one who comes at them and tries to eat them. Takes a lot of rounds to take him down. The android declares it a virus and examines the logs. I was afraid of this. The ship went somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. The name of the ship? The Far Horizon. Now I thought my play was bad.
The DM is cribbing from all the places. I will say one more Star Wars reference, and then I think we will wrap up. I've always thought it was funny that assuming an alternate reality where the Star Wars movies weren't made, but someone was running a Traveler game that was parallel to that. You get the scene with Obi-Wan, and he's like, I have a little bit of psyker power. I'm going to try and get this Imperial Guard to let us pass. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Okay, roll it. Double ones. He butt strokes you with his blaster rifle and orders you out of the land speeder. These are clearly the droids we're looking for. Hands up. Or how a Star Wars game could go sideways. Thanks for hanging out with us, Kyle. I really appreciate it, man. We'll find some fun to do. We'll definitely find some fun to do next week.
No, we don't have enough players for them, so it's not happening, unfortunately.
All right. Well,
we need 4 players to start with. Even if 4 players don't show up every week, we need 4 players to start with to get things moving.
We do need 4 players to get things moving, so please contact Kyle about that if you're interested in playing the D&D Hex Crawl. I certainly am. I rolled up a character twice, the second time because I didn't feel like his scores were cromulent. In that I felt like they were too high. So anyway, reach out to him about that. I will be back tomorrow night with Sky Hernstrom as special guest. Friday night, we'll be playing some Gamma Roll. Saturday, we are doing Nerd Council of Doom, of course, with myself, Dungeon Minister, and Yang Yan Zhao. So tune in for all of that tomfoolery. And thank you again, Kyle, for being here. I'm going to slide this over there real quick. Big ups to Fornelius, Miss Bella, Lord Corion, and Wave of Mutilation for the supers tonight. I really super appreciate it, guys. Yeah, I'm going to scoot on out of here. But listen, if you're in space, no one can hear you sing about the owl bear. Peace.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle way off course? Naked as a toad, all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in this little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing things, just take me to the show.